It has been about 80 years since the fall of the Third Reich and the Nazi regime in Germany. However, interest in this period of Germany and world history does not subside. There are many stories on the internet about how well Germans lived under Hitler and how the German industry, science, culture, and the standard of living and lifestyle of Germans were thriving. Well, let's try to consider this topic impartially, as much as possible, relying on facts and statements of eyewitnesses and historical figures of that time. Beginning. With the rise to power of the NSDAP, led by Hitler, Germany quickly overcame the effect of the economic crisis and began to develop rapidly. This is the foremost claim of the Reich supporters. Yes, indeed, upon coming to power, the National Socialists adopted a series of programs for the economic and the logistical development of the country. New bridges and highways started being constructed everywhere, and the old ones were being repaired. The technical modernization of some industrial enterprises and the construction of new ones began, which contributed to a significant increase in the number of jobs and a reduction in unemployment. By the time the Hitler Party came to power in 1933 in Germany, there were almost 6 million unemployed. By the beginning of World War II, there were not enough workers. Construction of small houses was expanded, which on preferential terms were given to German families for a moderate fee. But in urban development, houses with small apartments predominated, in order to quickly provide housing for young families. Imperial labor service and labor camps were created to engage youth and unemployed Germans in labor and public works. A nationwide German trade union called the German Labor Front was established, of course under Nazi control. Youth organizations were rapidly growing: Hitler Youth and League of German Girls. German science was developing, mainly in closed scientific institutions, typically connected with the military sphere. The first jet engines and airplanes were created. There were even tests of flying discs or saucers. Rocket technology and electronics developed. Also, it was in Germany where television evolved into a tool for spreading information and propaganda. In the USSR, the first television broadcast happened in 1934, a year earlier than in Germany. In the USA, the first television broadcast took place in 1927. The iconoscope was patented in 1931, considered the start date of television. However, it was in Germany that the social importance of television and its potential for advertising and propaganda were truly recognized. Therefore, in Nazi Germany, Joseph Goebbels' department quickly took control of television. The wife of the first propagandist of the Third Reich, Magda, played a major role in the establishment of German television and the development of television programs for them. According to acquaintances for this family, disputes and disagreements even arose between the Goebbels couple about this. The Minister of Propaganda himself considered television, above all, a means of propaganda and patriotic speeches of the leader of Reich. His wife insisted that the main method of popularizing television could be entertainment programs, interspersed with news and patriotic inserts. It is said that due to an argument with his wife, Goebbels initially declined to provide funding for his project. However, in the end, he listened to the opinion of his beloved wife. The year of birth of German television is considered to be 1935. Already in 1936, multi-dimensional filming of the Berlin Olympics was produced. However, the image quality was quite poor. Nevertheless, in 1937, a program for the industrial production of televisions was adopted. In Germany, they were called Telefunkens. Finally, the famous people's car was created, the Volkswagen subcompact, intended for ordinary German families. Reich propaganda day and night painted a picture of a prosperous Germany with happy people confidently looking to the future. Such an image in many ways succeeded. Many still present Germany during Hitler's reign as a kind of country's breakthrough to great heights. The arguments something like this: there were great achievements and the Germans really prospered. The most interesting thing about this is that many people still believe in this propaganda, which was another Goebbels myth. So why is it a myth? What was it really like? Let's base on the facts and figures. The first is the solution of socio-economic problems. Indeed, the Nazis were able to practically eliminate unemployment and even create a shortage of labor. However, this was achieved at the expense of unrestrained militarization of the economy and the widespread use of manual, often low-skilled labor. Yes, dear viewers, it was in industrialized Germany that primitive manual labor was widely used in the construction of roads and other construction of industrial facilities. In Germany during Hitler's times, there were wheelbarrows, large scoop shovels, and a large number of young people drawn into the compulsory labor, boys, girls, and even children. Before the war, they had to work for 6 months. With the beginning of World War II, the period of work increased to a year, and by the end of the war, as long as needed. So the picture is not so rosy. Another myth says that Hitler fed Germany. Let's compare. Before the rise of the Nazis to power in the Weimar Republic, in the pre-crisis period, ordinary Germans ate still better than under the Nazis. In 1937, compared to 1927 in Germany, the consumption of rye bread increased by 20%, while the consumption of wheat bread decreased by 44%. At the same time, the quality of bread in Reich was much worse than during the Republic. Corn flour was added to bread, rye and wheat, and bran and various ersatz were also added to rye. Meat consumption during the same period decreased by 18%, fats by 37%. Consumption of poultry meat and eggs has also decreased. Practically all of Germans' neighbors, both in the West and the East, ate better and of higher quality than the Germans. Here is an excerpt from Goering's speech at the NSDAP Congress in 1938. Firstly, from October 1st of this year, the blending of corn flour in white bread baking is being discontinued, and you will eat purely white bread, as you did before. He means before in the times of the Republic. I did it to please our gourmets from Ostmark, referring to Austria annexed by Germany. Secondly, fresh bread sales will be organized. This means that in 5 years of Nazi rule, Germans haven't even seen fresh bread, according to the confession of Nazi number 2 himself. Thirdly, the high percentage of bran in rye bread decreases, and you will again eat our old rye bread. Next, Goering pompously announced the abolition of the food ration cards, which the Nazi had introduced earlier. However, all this Nazi splendor did not last long. By 1939, everything was back to normal, both ration cards and corn in the bread and bran. It turns out that more or less decent bread in the flourishing Reich the Germans had only for 1 year. Food problems plagued fascist Germany during almost the entire period of the Reich. By 1941, Germany had run out of bread and other types of food supplies. The Germans faced starvation if it were not for the plundering of occupied countries, primarily the territories of the USSR. Only from the occupied territories of the Soviet Union from 1941 to 1943, the German occupiers exported 25 million tons of food. At the same time, the livestock population in Germany itself had decreased by almost 20% even before the war. The Nazis turned out to be the thrifty owners. The livestock population was growing in all of Germany's neighboring countries, but decreased in Germany. The Nazis cared so much about the welfare of people that they constantly reduced food purchasing while cutting their own production, guns instead of butter. If in the crisis year of 1932, still during the Weimar Republic, 4.4 million tons of products were purchased, then already in 1933, the year the fascists came to power, 3.2 million tons, and in 1935, 2.9 million tons. Well, why buy if we'll attack soon and capture it anyway? Germany was the only country in Europe where before World War II there were ration coupons, or food stamps. Coupons were practically on most products and consumer goods: meat 700 grams per week, oil 200 grams, cereals 150 grams, fats 340 grams, coffee or substitute 56 grams, marmalade 110 grams, etc. Coupons for soap, shoes, textile goods, and even coal. Another myth is that people's car, for which the Nazi authorities preemptively collected money from German workers, 5 marks per month for a car priced at around 1700 marks, despite the average worker's salary being 35 marks. It was a kind of Nazi financial pyramid. Before the war, only a few hundred cars were produced. Within the beginning of World War II, all factory products went to the needs of the Wehrmacht. For the funds collected by the fascist authorities, already another state, FRG, settled accounts with the citizens during the 50s and 60s. So the new highways in the prosperous Reich were half empty. Primarily they were used by Wehrmacht vehicles and enterprises that typically served their own needs, and of course by the Mercedes of the Nazi bosses. Finally, about the German television empire of the Reich era. About 500 telefunkers were manufactured. Families of prominent Nazi and so-called tele-rooms, rooms for group viewing, equipped at enterprises of cultural and recreational institutions, were provided. The viewing, however, was free. They showed the news, Nazi and anti-Semitic propaganda, including all kinds of nastiness about the USSR, also sport programs and movies. There were several entertainment and family programs and shows for children, but the main time was devoted to propaganda and the cultivation of patriotism among the masses and the younger generation. What's the outcome? German workers and ordinary intelligentsia lived very modestly, saved on everything. The working day lasted almost 10 hours with a 5-day week or 9 hours with a 6-day week. With the beginning of the war, the duration of working hours of course began to increase. The food was worse than in the countries that Germany subsequently conquered or tried to conquer. Nazi leadership was more involved in propaganda than in real concern for people, and they were really good at propaganda. As for certain scientific and technical breakthroughs, the Germans slightly suppressed other leading countries in the field of jet engines and rocketry, also in medicine and pharmaceuticals, but we know at what cost. Perhaps that's all. Regarding tanks, they collected technologies from all over Europe and trophies from the USSR. Only after that, from 1942, they began to produce decent and even good tanks. In terms of aviation engine power, they could not suppress England and the USA. The same was true for the quality of air defense system. Well, as for the rest, almost everything was the same. Something is better than others, something is worse. There was no German Nazi miracle, except perhaps in the favorite minds of Hitler and Goebbels. Well, and for all those who were brainwashed. The Nazis failed the housing program as well. In fact, the project for the construction of affordable houses was not a Nazi idea. The project was developed back in the Republic. Its start was interrupted by the global crisis, then the Nazi came to power. They seized this program, passing it off as their own development, but they did not even implement it by 20%. In 10 years of the Weimar Republic, during not the easiest years, after World War I, which is known Germany lost, for example, 230,000 apartments were built in Berlin. During the 12 years of Nazi rule, a total of 102,000 apartments, a quarter of which were planned back in the Weimar era. This is despite the fact that the number of construction workers under the Nazis increased 2.5 times. However, the myth created by Nazi propaganda proved to be very tenacious and still wander from one story to another. Even those beautiful outfits of German women, which at times delighted the soldiers, as well as various household items, a good half of them were made not in Germany, but in other countries and came to the Germans as a gift from their husbands, brothers, sons, as their war trophies. That is, they were stolen from other countries.